And a very warm welcome on a not-so-warm day to the United Debate Show. Well, it's the red half of Manchester that has the bragging rights today after Wayne Rooney's 100th club goal secured the derby spoils at Eastlands. The match was marred by the Cristiano Ronaldo second-half dismissal. We'll be talking about all of that and many other things as we look ahead to the visit of two United midfield legends who can find themselves feeling the managerial strain. I'm Albiston Mann and I'm delighted to have alongside me former United and Scotland left-back Arthur Albiston, and alongside Arthur, a journalist and an editor of United We Stand fanzine, Andy Mitten. Gentlemen, you're very welcome to the show. In many ways, it was a very professional Manchester United win yesterday, wasn't it?
It was, especially in the first half, and I've spoken to a couple of City fans this morning and they said we were outclassed and we were lucky to go in just a goal down. United, in comparison and in contrast to last season, when I don't think they did well, I think they really let themselves down in the derby at Old Trafford, especially given the significance of that day, were well up for it, but they played well throughout. They were strong. Rooney was excellent. Michael Carrick was excellent, controlled the pace of the game, and City were quite disappointing. If I'm trying to look at it objectively, which is difficult, if I would have been a Blue, I would have been quite disappointed with my side in the first half.
It was almost a 10 out of 10 from United, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I never felt at any given time in the game as if we weren't going to get 3 points. Obviously, going down to 10 men and City doing better in the second half, you're going to have to do something. Your keeper's going to be involved, but to be fair, I think Van der Sar was probably a lot quieter than what he expected. A shot off the line near the end, but other than that, apart from one shot in the first half, that was it really. And as Andy said, United fully deserved the result.
You mentioned about Michael Carrick. He's a very significant player. He's one of those players who you don't necessarily think of being a headline act, but yesterday he had a significant part to play, didn't he?
Yeah, I'd see him as an 8 out of 10 player. I think some United fans are still not convinced by Carrick, a minority, but he's been a big success. He gets into the starting lineup of the English and European champions. He has been a big success since moving from Tottenham. And I saw a quote by Brian Robson about Carrick a few weeks ago where he says, his timing's perfect. He always gets into the right position. He never gives the ball away. He's similar to someone like Xavi at Barcelona. And yesterday, he was outstanding. He was probably the best player on the field. I thought Rooney did very well too. And United's defence was solid, especially young Raphael, given his inexperience to go into that environment, completely overshadowed Rubinho. But then City are only 2 points clear of the relegation zone. United would be expected to win.
Sure, I mean, you say expectations. I mean, you write everything off when it comes to a derby, but that measure of control, you always felt that United sort of had City at arm's length, didn't you?
Very much so. The first half, City couldn't get the ball off United, really. Talking about Carrick, he's very much a team player. I think all the players in the team would appreciate the role he does. United have always had players over the years that are very eye-catching, very fast, lots of crosses, lots of shots. Carrick's a very essential team player, and really City couldn't get the ball off United at all in the first half. And for a Manchester derby, I was sat there thinking, well, it's very quiet and we've quietened the crowd and we're controlling this game. All we need to do is get a goal, which we got.
And Andy mentioned Raphael. It was a big test, the occasion, the talent he was up against. Passed it with flying colours, didn't he?
He did, and it's very encouraging because Gary Neville has obviously been out injured and he isn't getting any younger, and he's been a hugely important player, a captain of the club. And Wes Brown played in that position last year, and he was seen as United's weak link quite unfairly, because in big games like Barcelona in the semi-final, Wes was probably the best player, but to have a really young lad coming through and not being fazed by it, I mean, he's only made his debut a couple of months ago, and he's a modern right-back. He goes forward. His control with both feet is excellent. And another player I think we should mention is Park, because Sir Alex Ferguson trusts him in big games, whether it's against Roma away or Manchester City away, and he doesn't get let down. And Arthur said about Michael Carrick being a team player, Park as well. He isn't the most technically gifted player, but he's full of running, he's always performs well, and yesterday was another example. He's a very reliable player, Ji-sung Park.
Yeah, it's often a surprise to a lot of United fans when he does get in those big games, but I mean, Sir Alex knows his side, knows his squad, knows his strength. There must be a reason why he picks him in the big game.
He's got a wealth of experience, and he got to the semi-finals of the Champions League a few seasons ago with PSV. So it wasn't as if he was coming from Asia straight into play at United. He'd already been in Europe, so he looks comfortable playing in the system that United have. But Raphael's been outstanding. I've seen his debut at Peterborough, and it was just incredible. And you know, he just has to look across the left-hand side of the pitch and look at Evra, and you've got two full-backs there. And Evra, I thought, did excellent yesterday as well. Getting forward all the time, so comfortable with the ball. And they can just nick the ball off players rather than tackle at them, and that's all you've got to do, win it off them.
And of course, he's got a twin brother as well who can play full-back. I mean,
that's right.
That's an enticing prospect.
That'll be a bit confusing for referees when there's a bit of kicking going on, yeah.
But that athletic full-back, that kind of mould of full-back, I mean, you were a full-back in your day. In 20 years, it's become a totally different role, hasn't it?
Well, you play at United, you're going to get a lot of the ball, especially at Old Trafford. You're going to get lots of the ball, and you've got to use it well, and invariably it's your defenders that do get a lot of time in it, because your midfield players and your strikers you'd expect to be tightly marked. So your use of the ball's got to be good, and the two full-backs I think have been outstanding. And not only Raphael, Gary Neville when he's been playing, and John O'Shea's slotted in there. They're all comfortable with the ball. But Evra, I thought, has been really good over the last couple of seasons.
It's an optimistic situation for Manchester United to be in, to have young players of that talent coming through. And when you look at the derby yesterday and you look how many players, are younger, there seems to be a younger breed coming through. Are you optimistic that as senior players are getting ousted, as Gary Neville's sort of at the latter stage of his career, that there is a youth, I know United got knocked out of the Youth Cup last week, but there's still a nucleus of youth coming through?
Yeah, United's recruitment policy has changed an awful lot, going back to when the last crop of youngsters really came through and made it in the early 90s. Then they were from Manchester largely. Now they're more likely to be from South America. And to get a lad at 15 and to identify him, not just as being a good talent, but as being good enough to get into the first team of the European champions, there's a real skill to that. And United's scouting network has become very sophisticated. It hasn't always worked out with the link-up clubs. It didn't work out in South Africa, Australia, Sweden. But now they seem to be picking up players in the World Youth Club Championship, in the pre-season tournaments in Hong Kong, like the Brazilians. We've got 4 young Brazilian players now. 3 of them are from a small city. And Manchester United are picking them up ahead of the bigger Brazilian clubs, partly because playing in Europe is still seen as being a goal for young South American lads. But it's very encouraging, and the bar keeps being raised. And Evra's, he isn't as young as the other lads, but his attacking instinct is a joy to watch as a fan, to see that. And then to see the younger players coming through and being spotted, and I'm told that there's a few more coming through. It's very important, and it saves the club money as well.
I think, Arthur, you mentioned there was a young 15-and-a-half-year-old played up front in the youth team who big things are expected of as well.
Well, you don't like to put pressure on young lads, but this young lad scored a great goal the other week there in an under-18 academy game, just like Robinho's against Arsenal, chipped it over the keeper, and he scored also against Chelsea in the Youth Cup during the week, and I think he was the youngest player on the pitch. So he's local and from Stretford, so that's nice to see. But certainly you don't like to put too much pressure on young lads, and we just hope the development will continue.
It's a fascinating thing, though. I mean, when you look back to the class of 92 and obviously the treble of 99, you almost feel as though that kind of thing won't happen again, that was sort of one moment in time. Do you feel that way?
It'll never happen with such a local group of players, because the football market has changed completely. It has now become more global, and it was only a few years ago United had never had a Brazilian, we'd never had a South American, I think, until Veron came along. And now United are linked to African players, and they come and sign, and nobody blinks their eyes. It's just seen as being the norm. And a certain part of me likes it when Manchester lads break through and play for Manchester United. And I think United have still got Manchester covered really well. But if you restrict yourself to the local market and to the UK market, then you're restricting the club's progress. And now United's rivals are not just domestically. They're competing with Barca, Madrid, Juventus, Milan and Bayern Munich for the best 16-year-olds in the world.
And, of course, we're likely to see a few of the up-and-coming against Blackburn Rovers in the Carling Cup in the week. I mean, that is, for those who don't see the Carling Cup as a significant part. I think managers see it as a genuine opportunity to give experience, genuine first-team experience to the next crop, and I think that's an important thing, isn't it?
Well, it's the next stage of their development. It's very hard to put young lads that haven't played many games into the cauldron of the Premiership or the Champions League and expect them to do well. There's very few players that can do that at a young age and handle it. So the next best stage is to get playing at Old Trafford with hopefully 60,000, 70,000 fans there, and it gives them an insight to just what it's like playing at Old Trafford or even playing away from home and trying to get a result and getting it inbred into them that everybody wants to beat United. So when it comes to the next stage, which is the Champions League or the Premiership, they find it a little bit easier.
I mean, United are a couple of wins. Well, obviously it's a two-legged semi-final, but in theory a couple of wins from a major domestic final. Sir Alex will want to win that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and if he can do it by using a blend of youth and experience, all the better. And these lads, they get the chance, they don't always take it. Coventry City came to Old Trafford last year and destroyed United, and there were some very disappointing performances by lads who were supposedly on the cusp of the first team. And I think Sir Alex and his coaches looked at that and said, he's not got it. He'll make it as a footballer, but he's not got it to play at Manchester United. Blackburn, United's opponents, they're not playing well at all. There's been some criticism of Paul Ince as manager, saying that his team don't have the aggression that Mark Hughes' side had, and they were called Black Eye Rovers, I think, by one or two observers. They're struggling at the wrong end of the table. They shouldn't be, given their wage structure, given the quality of some of their players. They're going to want to prove people wrong, given that they keep on losing. But I still think United can overcome them.
And of course, I mean, we were talking before about who's left in the Carling Cup. It's a good opportunity for United. I mean, I know it's another fixture that might get cancelled, looking too far in advance, but you keep winning, you get a trophy in the cabinet by the end of February. That's a great way to spring yourself into the business end of the season, isn't it?
Well, the longer you stay in cup competitions, obviously the fixtures do pile up, but that's the way you'd want it, really. And United have got a big enough squad to cope with it. And some of these young lads that will get a game on Wednesday night against Blackburn will be wanting to stay in the team and hopefully get a game in a double-header semi-final as well, and possibly the final. So, yeah, you hope you're going to have a fixture pile up in February, March and April, but that goes with the territory of playing at a successful club.
I mean, obviously United have still got the Fulham game. The Wigan game gets cancelled because of the trip to Japan. Are you concerned that pile-up might start to become an issue, or do you think United should be able to cope, given the resources?
They should be able to, because as Arthur says, United have got a squad, a huge squad, and the club is geared towards winning not just the league, but challenging for trophies on 4 different fronts. So it would only take a big injury problem to affect that. United have been lucky with injuries. I mean, what other team could go into the final of the European Cup, like United did last year, having every single player fit? So we've been lucky with injuries, and if you compare United to the main rivals, Real Madrid have got 9 of their first team out at the moment. They'd be quite nice to bump into in the next stage of the Champions League. But it's improbable that United would win the quadruple or the treble. Winning the double, even retaining the European Cup, would be a major achievement. But they've certainly got the talent.
Well, the games that we've got to fit in, without being disrespectful to Fulham and Wigan, and if I think we got to the Carling Cup, it would be Portsmouth, all home matches. Without being disrespectful to their clubs, if we've got a bit of a tricky 2-week period near the end of the season when we've got to cram a lot of games in, it's a big bonus having them all at home.
OK, well, plenty more to discuss after the break. We'll be discussing a little bit more about Blackburn and Paul Ince and Sunderland and Roy Keane and various other matters. So join us in a couple of minutes. Very warm welcome back to part 2 of the United Debate Show with me, former United fullback Arthur Albiston, and Manchester United journalist and fanzine writer Andy Mitten. Gents, we were talking about Blackburn at the end of part 1. Paul Ince has got what looks like the biggest crisis of his young managerial career on his hands at the moment as he comes to Old Trafford on Wednesday. How would you assess what he has to do there?
Tough times for Paul Ince. He did well at Macclesfield, very, very well. He picked them up when they were adrift at the bottom of the League Two. Gates of 1,600, written off as going down, and he turned them around completely. He had a bit of financial backing to do it. Milton Keynes Dons poached him there, did very well there, but there's a big jump up from winning League Two to coming into the Premiership. He seems to have that steel to do well, but so far I don't think that Blackburn fans have been won over by him. The players haven't been won over by him. And I heard Kevin Gallagher talking about him, saying he needs to control the egos of some of the bigger Blackburn players. I've spoke to a couple of the Blackburn players about him, and the jury is still out with regards to their new manager.
It's a big game for him at Old Trafford on Wednesday, really. I mean, he knows United aren't going to be full strength, and he might see this as a way of giving them a positive way to get back into the Premier League.
It's a big opportunity for Blackburn Rovers, a quarter-final of a major competition, and as you say, it gives them an opportunity if they could get a result, which will be difficult, but if they could get a result, it might just give them a little bit of a springboard to get results in the league. But difficult task there. He's following Mark Hughes, who done ever so well, but he's got Archie Knox there, who we all know from the United days. Archie's got a wealth of experience, so you know, that should help him, guide him through it, but it's going to be a tough season for them.
So when you look at the former United players who are now managing, obviously you mentioned a couple of them there, and Steve Bruce and Roy Keane, and we often think to ourselves when, you know, as journalists as well as and observers as well as people who are in the game, about who might be Sir Alex Ferguson's successor, and you immediately think of those who've come through the ranks. I mean, who do you think from that batch might be leading the race?
If I had to say a successor now and was given a choice, I'd say Jose Mourinho. By a distance.
So not someone who's come through the United ranks?
If Sir Alex steps aside tomorrow, that's what I would say. Right. Shortly followed by... I really like Manuel Pellegrini at Villarreal. Very intelligent, done exceptionally well at every level. Of the former players, it seems to be cyclical. I can remember 10 years ago people saying Brian Robson. It's not really worked out for him. Mark Hughes, his career is enjoying an upward trajectory, but he's at Manchester City. And Keane, 2 years ago, you would have said, yeah, I won't write Keane off. I still think he's got something there, done very well. Steve Bruce, probably not United level at the moment. But these things change, and when Sir Alex going to retire, you know? It could be another 15 years.
That's a key question, really. If any of the lads that we just mentioned are enjoying a bit of success at the club they're at, possibly getting them into Europe as well, they'll probably get touted for the job. But I think a lot of the press just jump on the bandwagon because they are ex-United players. But whenever the manager decides to leave, I don't think the club will get themselves in a situation that they got themselves into 4 or 5 years ago when they announced during the season he was going to retire, and it was maybe a little bit of a panic on, and supporters are a bit aghast at that. I think whoever takes over, it'll all be set in stone a year or two in advance.
But doesn't it say a lot about Sir Alex and the way that he's assembled his squad and the characters, that there are so many of his former players now managing, not in the lower divisions, in the Premier League?
Yeah, he's the most vital man at that football club by a distance. And you only need to look at United's major rivals to see. Look at Madrid. Right? They're the champions of Spain and the manager's facing the sack. United have got a stability because of Sir Alex Ferguson. And fans don't always agree with what he does and the things that he says and the way he speaks out, but he commands a loyalty from his players and a respect, partly through fear. You know, some of the players are really scared of him. But the man's a genius. He's going to go down. If he wins another European Cup, he'll go down as possibly the greatest manager ever. He's that good because he controls not just the playing side of it, but he controls the media side of it. He controls people within the club as well. And I don't think you will see another Ferguson-type character.
What does it feel like, do you think, for... I mean, this week, Paul Ince and Roy Keane, and Sunday was Mark Hughes. What do you think it feels like to these guys to come up against, you know, the master and apprentice scenario?
Well, I'm sure they'd all, if they were sat here, would admit they've learnt a great deal from him. And Mark Hughes has had a bit of success in games against United, but certainly I think all of them to a man would admit that they played a big part in their careers, and you can throw into the mix other players, other ex-players like Gordon Strachan, Mark McGee, Alec McLeish. You know, the list is quite endless. So fear's not a bad thing, actually. It can get better performances out of people, and the manager, a lot of managers have a problem because players are on such big salaries now at other clubs, and some of them are almost on a quotable edge with the manager. Whereas at United, they know that the manager still rules the roost, and if they're not performing, they're not playing. I
mean, Roy Keane's going to bring Sunderland to Old Trafford, really, in facing the biggest crisis that he's faced as a manager. I mean, the language that was coming out from him at the weekend, I don't think I've ever heard him say ever, and certainly not during his playing days.
To be fair to Roy, they're a club with big expectations. He's done great there, they're coming to Old Trafford at the weekend. Nobody expects them to get anything. I think it's the games after that are against teams down the bottom that he'll be more concerned about. Yeah, it's a great chance for them to get 3 points at the weekend at Old Trafford, but being realistic about it, they're not going to get them. It's the games after that will be concerning Roy. I think they've got West Brom, Hull and Blackburn, I think, following that, so that's their big games.
He's always, throughout his career, been extremely honest and straightforward, Roy Keane. You know when he says something, there's no frills to it. And it doesn't surprise me, I guess. Does it surprise you that his language is so straight and honest about the predicament he's in?
I really like that about him. I like the fact that in a day when there's so many cliches and people being controlled by PR machines, Roy is just honest and brilliantly, brutally honest. He was when he was a player, and most fans, while they didn't always agree with him, they would nod in it. They would accept that they respected his honesty. He's been the same as a manager. As a journalist, there is no better person to interview. Possibly Cantona, they're the best too, because they're so quotable and occasionally outspoken. And he was a hugely successful player, and I think he's been a successful manager because he took Sunderland from the bottom of the Championship into the Premiership, established Sunderland in the Premiership. I know he's bought 425 players since they've come up, and the defence changes every week, and you can use that as an argument to beat Roy. But he's doing well. He's having a difficult time at the moment, but he can come through that. And people have said he's a type who'll walk away. Well, he hasn't so far. And he's been at Sunderland. He's not been there for 2 months. He's been there over 2 years now.
I was going to say the bottom line is, you know that he's committed to you. He wants everybody to be committed. That scenario we had in the tunnel at Highbury 4 or 5 years ago, I think that shows Roy for what he is. He's standing up to Vieira, who was trying to intimidate some of our players, Gary Neville being one of them. And also the World Cup saga, he got a lot of stick over that, but he's only doing that and coming out with that because he wants better conditions, not only for himself, for all the other players in that Irish squad. So he got a little bit of unjust criticism in that one, I think.
Do you think the relationship between Roy and Sir Alex is such that Roy and Sir Alex might embark on a conversation regarding the situation that Roy Keane's in? I mean, is he a manager who gives advice to his former students?
Yeah, I'm sure he is, and I don't think Roy would be too embarrassed or has got such an ego that he couldn't ask for advice. Sir Alex will give it if he's asked, and I'm sure he wants Roy to do well up there like everybody does.
Sir Alex said last week that he's not best friends with all of his former players, and he said they've got their own friends, but they often call him for advice, and he will always have a drink with them after the game. And Roy's good at his job, but he knows that Sir Alex is more experienced than him and will have encountered situations which perhaps he's encountering for the first time.
OK, gents, well, we've run out of time. I know it flies by when we're chatting. Thanks very much indeed, Andy. Arthur, thanks for your time. That's it for this week. As always, plenty more to discuss next week, so join us same time, same place. Until then, goodbye.